So it's probably not necessary, but, so this is Mr. Paul Toner. He's the third candidate for the superintendency that has come before us, and I'm just going to hand it over to Paul, and he introduce himself, and then we'll.
Make sure they talk into the mic.
And yeah, the other thing we've done the last couple of days, if you have a question, please come to that mic, it's because this is being taped for the local cable access TV, I guess, and so otherwise people won't be able to hear your questions. Thanks very much. Paul?
Hi, thank you very much for taking some time this afternoon to visit. I'll just take a few minutes to tell you a bit about myself and my background, and then I just want to open it up to any questions that you have. My name is Paul Toner, and I am the former president of the Massachusetts Teachers Association, but long before I held that role, I was a teacher in the Cambridge public school system for 10 years, taught social studies in middle school at the Harrington Elementary School in East Cambridge. From there, I went on to become the president of the Cambridge Teachers Association, and then later the vice president and president of the MTA. I'll just tell you a little bit about why I became a union leader, and part of the reason is I felt that the union could be doing a lot more to lead change in our school district and help improve our school district and outcomes for kids. In that role, I had a lot of opportunities over the 5 years to work with central administration, work with my members, and work with the public to help improve the Cambridge Public Schools. And we did make some significant changes and turnarounds to actually bring students and parents back to the schools and improve outcomes. I went on to become the vice president and then the president of the MTA because I felt that, again, teachers could and should be leading the way on change in education, and I try to lead that way. I believe I'm a solutions-oriented person. I go into things trying to, look at problems and work to consensus with people to find solutions, and that's how I approach my role as a statewide union leader. During the course of my interviews and during the course of the day here in Everett and talking to folks, I really want to just highlight how my experiences equate to being a superintendent of schools. The reality is it's just the opposite side of the coin. I dealt with school budgets, I dealt with school leadership, I dealt with human resource issues, I dealt with political issues, both at the local and state level. And I feel that I was very successful at it because I worked with people and I built trust and respect. And that's what I would want to do here in Everett, is work with the school committee, work with the students, work with the staff, and work with the general Everett community to build upon the very strong foundations that you already have here in the schools. I know that you've had strong leadership over the past 30 years, and now you're looking for a new leader. And I really want to communicate and talk to the community about what it is they're looking for in changes in Everett. I think that there's a lot of positives that are going on here, but I think there's an awful lot that we can do to improve outcomes for kids. But I don't have all the answers. A lot of people have said, well, what's your vision for Everett? I have some ideas, but I really want to make sure that I take the time to come in and talk to teachers, talk to parents, talk to students about what their vision for Everett is. Because the only way it's going to work in the long run is if we build the vision together and move forward from there. A little bit about my personal background. I grew up in Somerville and Cambridge. I have been asked a couple of times today about why do I want to work in Everett. Well, I feel like Everett is very similar to the communities that I grew up in and worked in. I grew up in a working class neighborhood of Somerville and Cambridge. My parents were working class folks. I lived in a working class neighborhood. Most of the folks were police, firefighters, tradespeople, teachers, and they were a very strong community, and it was all about supporting one another. And I feel that Everett is, in many respects, just like the community I grew up in. And I made a decision early in life that I wanted to pursue a career where I could help people and give back to my community. And I had a number of ideas. Some of those ideas were law and politics, but my teachers actually played a big role in encouraging me to think about teaching as a career. When I graduated high school and went off to college, I actually made the decision to pursue teaching. It took a little while, a couple of years of substitute teaching. There wasn't this huge teacher turnover back in the late 80s, early 90s, so it took a few years of substitute teaching in Boston and Cambridge, but I became a teacher at the Harrington Elementary School. I did go on to get my law degree because that was an interest of mine, to pursue a law degree. I chose not to end up pursuing the career of law because I felt I was having much more of an impact by working with kids in my community in Cambridge. And I used the law degree in other ways. And then I went on to take on a leadership role in the Cambridge Teachers Association. From there, I just like to stop and open it up to questions from the floor. Mm-hmm.
And a lot of fine teachers, colleagues who have left, and it's been a continuing issue. I'd like to know how you address that. Another thing that I speak to my students, I say school should be a place of joy. Mm-hmm. Because I think if kids are happy, we're happy, it's a lot of, it's really effective learning. So I'd like to know how you define a joyful school.
Okay. I'll start with the first one. I mean, a joyful school is a place where kids and teachers in the community want to come to. They rush in the door. They're engaged in their learning. They feel that there is value in what they're doing day in and day out in the school, that they can celebrate in one another and their accomplishments. So I believe that, a joyful school is a place that people don't go to because they have to. They go to because they want to, and they want to celebrate one another, and they feel that what they're doing is relevant and engaging. In terms of the issue about turnover, I know it's an issue that's been faced by other districts, but just in discussions today, I've heard that there's been some significant turnover. I'd really want to dig into that. There are ways for us to do surveys and climate surveys and do some focus groups with folks. I'd want to do exit interviews with teachers that are leaving to find out what's causing them to leave. And I would like to take that information and data and really build upon it. New teachers coming into the district, a lot of places have difficulty holding on to new teachers because they don't feel supported. I'd want to look at what we have here in place for mentoring and orientation programs and build upon that as well to make sure that everybody that's in the system feels like that they're getting the support they need in their first few years of the district. I also want to make sure that we build a system where we're not overly relying on certain teachers to be the support system, because a lot of teachers, I think, get called upon to support the new teacher down the hall, and they're pretty much overtaxed as well. So I'd really want to do a deep dive with the teachers and the teachers union to find out what some of the issues are and build new support systems for them.
Paul, I'll ask you the same question I've asked the other candidates who've come here, among the many I've asked. We have, DESE has a somewhat new accountability system, but nevertheless, the MCAS test and testing still plays a major role in accountability for districts. And for districts like our own, that's a major issue because of the, generally speaking, the correlation between low socioeconomic communities and performances on the tests. And as you know, there's a discourse that comes out of, for instance, the Mass Teachers Association and other groups, Citizens for Public Education, things like that, that's saying that we're over-tested and that there's too much emphasis placed on that in evaluating students and districts. Just philosophically, generally, what is your attitude towards testing and the role it plays in public education?
Sure. Well, I'll just say that I started teaching before the Ed Reform Law of 1993 and before MCAS, and I taught in, as I said, the Cambridge Public Schools. And before Ed Reform or before MCAS, I felt like there really wasn't much accountability, even across one small district with 15 schools, and there really wasn't any standardization in terms of what does an A mean, and how do we know if we're serving kids. So I will say that I don't want to go back to the days when we didn't have anything. I definitely think that we need some sort of objective standards for us to be looking at and assessments for us to be using to determine whether we're meeting the goals for our kids. I don't think they should be used in a punitive way. I think that they're a piece of information that helps guide teachers' teaching and helps a district make some decisions about where they should be allocating their resources. It is state law. It is state regulation. I know that our new Commissioner of Education, relatively new, Jeff Riley, is talking about different ways of looking at it and different opportunities for measuring school success. So I think we're in for a long conversation about those changes. But I have always been somebody who is not afraid of data and assessment. I just think that we need to make sure we talk about it the right way and use it the right way. I know that during my 8 years at MTA and state union leadership, we dealt with teacher evaluation, we dealt with conversations about Common Core and standards, and I was glad that we were at the table and part of those conversations because I think that we affected them in a positive way. Had we not been there, maybe they would have been more onerous or more challenging for teachers in schools. So that's my general philosophy, is you do have to have some sort of measure of whether children are learning. More and more people are talking about project-based learning, competency-based measures. I'm open to all those things, but obviously we still have to meet the requirements of the state.
It's okay. That was even funnier, though. Thanks. As you know, Everett High School is creating, developing an academy model along with and in conjunction with the CTE program, Career Vocational Education. What is your experience in that, and what is your vision for when you're coming in?
Sure. So I'm actually very excited about what you've started and created here. I know that you're only 2 years into it. Cambridge, in the district that I worked, Cambridge Ridgeland has a comprehensive high school with a vocational program and its traditional high school merged together. They don't have pathways. They are starting to do more and more internships, but they don't have pathways as you have structured here. As I said, I'm very excited about it. I think, in fact, I would love for us to be working with sixth graders and getting them to think even earlier about, what's the general trend of what you're interested in. Because in my experiences working with middle school and high school kids, I witnessed kids who were juniors and seniors in high school who would tell me, I used to work for a group called Jobs for Bay State Graduates to help them do some career planning, and they would tell me that they wanted to be engineers or architects. And when I would look at their transcripts, they hadn't even taken Algebra 1 yet. I think we need to be talking to kids much earlier about what their hopes and dreams are, and then helping them map out what they need to do in high school to be successful if that's really what they want to do. So my experience has been as a classroom teacher, as a Jobs for Bay State graduate advisor at the high school, and also at the state level working with, I'm on the Board of Higher Education as well, and we've been doing a lot around early college, high school, dual enrollment policies to encourage young people to be thinking about these opportunities much earlier, to show that they can be successful and help support them getting their associate's degree and hopefully moving on to get their bachelor's degree. But I also am somebody who, if a kid wants a 4-year degree, great. We need to prepare them and give them that opportunity. But I also think that we need to be just as much about careers for kids and giving them a notion, an idea of what jobs are available and what they need to do to be prepared for it. It was interesting during the day here today, we went around here at the high school to about 6 or 7 classrooms, and your principal asked the kids, how many of you work? And probably 80% of them said they work. Then he said, how many hours do you work? Most of your students, which you know, are working anywhere from 30 to one young woman said she's working 50 hours a week. Now, I don't encourage kids to be working 50 hours a week in high school. I'm very happy to hear that many of them are working 10 to 20 hours because I think that's an equally valuable experience and education as the academics that they get in school because they're out there in the workplace learning how to work with adults, learning things about being on time for work, learning about taxes and paychecks, finances. So it's a different kind of education, but it's an essential piece of their overall education. Hi.
So I just want to sort of dovetail off of that. In moving to this comprehensive academy model, as you know, we have a number of ELL students, most of which I would say have been fairly well educated in their home country that enter our school in grades 10, 11, sometimes even 12, what your plan is to balance the enriching experience for them in this comprehensive model so that they have access to the arts and all of these pathways and CTE and innovation pathways and programs with the mandate from DESE for the number of direct ESL minutes instruction that they have to receive.
Well, on that, I would have to sit down with the high school leadership and the ELL department to make sure that we're meeting those required mandates and focus on how we can maybe restructure the day for those young people or provide maybe some other opportunities beyond the school day for them to meet those while they can also engage in the other activities that they have here at school. There are other opportunities maybe to do things like acceleration academies during the February and April vacations, summer vacations. Maybe for those students have an extended day where they can also get the additional hours that they need for their ELL learning. So I think, I want us to think out of the box, because if we think that the only thing that we have at our disposal is the 6.5-hour traditional school day, we're just going to spin our wheels. So I think it's going to take a lot of sitting down and thinking about some new ways of scheduling the day for some of these students, maybe for some of the teachers who are willing to participate in that. But I think we have to start being a little more flexible and get beyond the 6.5-hour school day. Yep.
Part of our struggle is those students are the same students that are working the 50 hours a week, so to extend their day has been a challenge for us.
Yeah, well, I mean, we're going to have to go and really go dig deep with these individual students to find out what their personal schedules look like and meet them where they are and try to customize a learning plan for them to meet the requirements that they have to meet. That really is on the table for me, is like, how do we meet them where they are?
Hi. So, talking about the academies and also the CTE, but we also started to bring up the arts. So basically, I'm sure you're aware that Everett has cost-free sports for all of our students. We're starting some GBL middle school leagues also, but also we're looking to expand some of our humanities with theater, dance, and other opportunities for our students. What are your thoughts on that, and is that something you're willing to grow, but also keep our culture the way it has been with the cost-free tuition?
Oh yeah. Number one, coming from Cambridge, I've been lucky enough that as a kid myself, and then as my children went through the school system in Cambridge, just like Everett, everything's cost-free. Kids play sports, participate in activities, take AP courses, electives. Those are all free. Uniforms, etc. I'm a huge supporter of a whole child, well-rounded education, and many of those things are what keep a lot of our kids coming to school. So as we deal with chronic absenteeism, we have to find out what keeps the kids coming to school, and the arts is one of those huge areas that bring kids to school. So I would want to invest more funds in all of those areas if possible. If we don't have the tax dollars or the tax base to do it, then I would want to go out and seek grant funding and maybe work with some of the nonprofits and business communities folks here in Everett to find more funding. But my own children have had the value and the experience of sports and the arts, and I'd want that for every child and family who wants it.
Good afternoon.
Hi.
Sorry for coming in late, but I did ask if the following question was asked. There are different leadership styles, management styles. Can you explain a bit what your management style is?
Absolutely. So my name is Paul Francis Toner, but if I had another middle name, it's Collaboration. I have been someone who has led through my classroom and led through the Teachers Union in Cambridge and the MTA through collaboration. Teachers can't do it alone, principals can't do it alone, the schools can't do it alone. We have to work with all sorts of community organizations. We have to work with the city council, the business community, the school committee, and other organizations to have our children reach their highest potential of success. When it comes to working just within the schools, any lasting change that's going to occur is something that's built together. I am very much about learning about other people's leadership styles and finding out where they're successful and where they need growth, and then trying to provide the supports that they need to improve their performance. I'm all about not coming in and doing I gotcha. I'm about coming in and really having the conversation with people about what they need to be successful and trying to provide that for them. When it comes to labor management relation issues, I'm someone who has been a huge supporter of collaborative bargaining, interest-based bargaining, I was on the union side of the table, but even in my role at MTA where we had unionized employees, I really believed in working together to solve the issues, and I think it's been successful. So if in me, coming in as a new leader, I'd come in as a listener first, and then I would start talking to folks about, so what are the top 2 or 3 priorities we want to focus on first, and build a plan together to attack those problems and implement. Does that answer your question?
I'll ask the same question I asked the other 2 candidates the previous couple of days. In the last couple of years, how many other school districts have you applied to be the superintendent? Are you a superintendent candidate in any other school district at this time? And if so, did you receive interviews? Did you make semifinalists, finalists? How far did you get in the process, if any, in any other school district?
Yep, I think I was in the process in 4 over the past year, all gateway cities. I'm not currently in the process anywhere else. I am actually very excited about the possibility of Everett, mainly because, again, like I said, I feel like it's very similar to the communities that I grew up in and worked in. And I'm very excited about, especially what I saw today. I truly enjoyed going around and visiting your students and your fellow teachers in the district. It was a wonderful opportunity to see the great work that you guys are doing. Yes, I have been candidates elsewhere. I have made it into not the finalist round like I am right now, but I have been in the pre-final round.
Paul, beyond being your guide, I've asked you a few questions before, but could you, for the audience here, explain, obviously you've never been a superintendent before, explain how your career path will be able to translate into becoming a superintendent, if you could?
Sure. Well, first of all, I personally believe if you're going to be a superintendent, you should have been a classroom teacher at some point in your career. So being a teacher and understanding the shoes that people are walking in and the issues they deal with. Going from there, I was an assistant principal for a short period of time up at the Harrington School, filling in for my then assistant principal. But then going on to be the president of the Cambridge Teachers Association for 5 years. I know your union president is sitting here, Kim Auger, and she can tell you that, as local union president, you're dealing with many of the issues that principals and assistant superintendents and superintendents deal with. In fact, Chapter 150E of Mass General State Law says the union president is the equal of the superintendent for all things collective bargaining and dealing with the school committee. And, when I was in my role in Cambridge, I was dealing with all the human resource issues. I was at all the collective bargaining issues. I was at all the budget meetings. I dealt with the city council and school committee. I dealt with the politics of the city. I worked with the business community. Worked with parent organizations, and I was out and about in the city promoting our public schools. And that, in my opinion, is what the majority of what the superintendent's job is about. But it's also about leading the education workforce here, and I want to be there to support them and help them do the best that they can for the students of Everett. My experience at the state level is much more of the policy level, but I did build a $40 million budget for 8 years in a row from scratch. Started in October, went all the way through May, had to present it to our advisory committee, then our executive committee, then our board, then our MTA annual meeting where I had to stand in front of 1,600 people every year and explain penny for penny what we were spending their dues dollars on. I dealt with state level politicians, with the governor's office. I was heavily involved with education evaluation legislation and policy. I was very involved with healthcare related issues. These are all things that you deal with as a superintendent. So I know you have an $89 million budget. I dealt with a $43 million budget. As far as I'm concerned, I have all the experience that you would need to deal with the issues that you have as a superintendent in Everett.
One of the biggest issues we're going to face in Everett in the next few years is classroom overcrowding. Hopefully with the Student Opportunity Act, we'll have plenty of money. We will not have the space, as you probably saw today, walking around to open more classrooms. So how do you relieve the pressure on the teachers that are in the classroom, in the trenches, as we call them, on a daily basis? Right now, the class size isn't too bad in most areas, but I can see it climbing with virtually no answer to the problem. So how would you deal with that over the next few years?
Sure. Well, if it hasn't been done already, we definitely have to have an audit of the facilities that you have available to you, not just the school department facilities, but any other facilities that may be available through the city and maybe some vacant spaces here in Everett. From my experience walking around the schools today and seeing lovely, lovely children, well-behaved children learning in 32, 33 kids in a classroom, they're at capacity. And I heard that loud and clear from the teachers and from the principals that we met with today. There's no quick fix. We're going to have to sit down with the mayor and the city council and the school committee and others involved in these decisions and map out a long-term plan, because your city is growing and expanding, and you as Everett are a wonderful alternative to far more expensive places like Cambridge and Boston, and people are moving here because of that, and because of the quality of the schools that you have and the opportunities they see here in Everett. So we do need to have a conversation about expanding, possibly building either new structures or expanding on the ones that you already have.
As superintendent, let's say you have an idea, policy or practice that you would like to implement, and it would affect, it would happen in classrooms. It would change, let's say, the working conditions of the teachers. How would you go about that?
Well, first of all, I would never just implement. I would, number one, discuss it with the teachers union and also bring it out and discuss the idea across the district with the teachers that would be impacted and the administrators impacted. And I would try to build support for it first, because one former principal I know, told me that the secret to his success is he actually never did anything that his teachers didn't agree 75% to. So not that we would necessarily, have a vote on everything, but I never put forward a proposal that I didn't know that I had strong support from the people it was going to impact. So, whatever that idea might be, or that new curriculum, or whatever policies or proposals I'd be bringing forward, I would do my homework. I would investigate how it would impact people. I would investigate what the costs were. I would investigate how people felt about it, and I would build support for it. I would never try to force something upon the community.
So, with you just saying that, I'm just going to put an elephant on the table. I think some people are concerned regarding you being the former president of the Massachusetts Teachers Association, that you were just going to be there for the unions, and that would be your main focus. And how can you assure us, all of us, including the union, that you're here on a fair ground, fair level, to make sure that everyone's getting the education they need?
Yeah, so I only got involved with the union because I wanted to make sure kids were getting the best education they could possibly get in the city of Cambridge. And I went on from there to get involved with the Mass Teachers Association because I wanted to make sure that we, as a profession of educators, were leading change and not having people tell us how to do it. Just like you asked whether I would impose a program on people. Well, that's what we were dealing with. I wanted to make sure that the teachers' voices and the union's voice was heard in that. But at the forefront of that all along was I felt that we needed to be about what's best for the kids, in this case, of Everett, or the kids of Massachusetts, or the students of Cambridge. So that's what drove me. And, there are some folks in the union who aren't happy with some of the decisions I made in the past, but I made those decisions based on what I thought was right for public education for the students we serve. I know that I will have a collaborative relationship with the teachers union here, but we aren't going to agree on everything. My motto is we should agree to disagree without being disagreeable. So you're not going to agree on every single answer solution, but we work through that. I'm not running for union president anymore. I'm here asking you to make me the superintendent of Everett. And I will enter that job focused on what's best for the students of Everett, and hopefully it's also in line with what's best for the teachers of Everett. Hi.
We know when people are happy at work, they perform better. Situation you hear about that in a school, teachers are unhappy, they're frustrated, so the climate is very negative. So it goes, either a union rep goes to talk to you and tells you about it. What would be the first step, and how would you help to create a better working environment for that school?
Yep. And so again, if it's not already being done, one of the things that I would want to do, having heard some of these issues raised, is do some climate surveys. A lot of districts do them annually, or at least every other year, and use that as a tool and information for the administrative staff and for the teachers to look at. So what's going on in this school? I want to be transparent with folks. I don't want to use those tools as I gotcha against the building administration, but we have to look at it. I've been told that there's been some issues around recruiting and retaining teachers here in Everett. We don't want to be losing people. We want to get the best people to come here and stay here, and we want to make sure that they are working, as you said, in a positive climate. And I think using climate surveys in an appropriate way can help us have those transparent, hard discussions. Now, if I were to find that, we've got bully administrators or bully principals, that's going to be part of their evaluation. They're going to have to take some corrective actions, but I really believe in working collaboratively with folks and supporting people. And, things start at the top. I will be setting that example for the principals in the central administration office, and making sure that we're creating a warm, supportive climate for our teachers and our students.
One of the challenges we have as a district is we have, as people have said before, we have a large immigrant population, students whose English is not their primary language. We all have to have an SEI endorsement, but that's one course. I'm a special ed teacher. I co-teach in a lot of classes. I want to make sure that every student in every corner of my classroom is getting the benefit of education. So what kind of best practices do you see as we could do to help those students that aren't getting the education they deserve because of our own need to provide their learning and then as an EL student?
Right. So you're correct to point out that retail and SEI endorsement was just the one class. That's something that I would want to invest time and resources in here in Everett to support our teachers working with all of our teachers are working with those students, but support them in their work with those students. I would also want to investigate what is successful in some of the other gateway cities. I did mention acceleration academies. I know that, for instance, Jeff Riley has had some success in Lawrence with providing extra out-of-school time for students to be practicing their English language skills. And that's the key for kids to be successful in taking on a new language, is just practice, 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 and being, it's an oral skill that they have to use it. And I would want to give them all those opportunities and support the teachers in whatever professional development needs we identify to support them.
So I'm going to ask a question for a certain social studies teacher in the room that didn't want to come to the microphone. But now I have to say. So there's been such a focus on ELA and math that social studies and science gets pushed aside at the elementary level very often. With the new social studies standards, how will you support the curriculum at the lower and middle school levels?
Sure. So as I told you, I believe, I was a middle school social studies teacher in Cambridge. I love history and social studies. I think it's something that is to be brought to life in hands-on projects with kids. I spent all of my 9 to 10 years teaching in Cambridge, bringing guest speakers, bringing them on field trips to the State House or City Hall, taking them to Washington, D.C., having them engage in activities like debating constitutional issues based on modern themes. So it's near and dear to my heart. And if for some reason it's not getting its full due in the schedule in the elementary schools, I'd want to work with the principals to make sure that we correct that. And provide ample opportunities for students to participate in social studies and the sciences. I don't want to put this out there as a negotiations proposal. However, I do know that in schools that have expanded learning time, and they've done it in many different ways, either with outside organizations or having teachers who voluntarily want to participate, having more time in the day to be able to expand and add to those topics. But social studies, if it's not getting its full due in time, I would definitely want to make sure we correct that.
Well, we've alluded to it a little bit here, but just a simple question. What does good professional development look like as far as you're concerned?
Teacher-led professional development and focused on actual work that you're doing in school and bringing it back and practicing it. I mean, I've sat through many professional development programs like yourselves in an auditorium listening to a person on a microphone or just being lectured at. And the best professional development that I've experienced and at Teach Plus, the organization I work with now, that we've done with teachers, is having teachers learn something new with their peers, talk about it, play with it, go back to their school, try it out, experiment with it, and come back and reflect and debrief on what worked and what didn't, and then make changes. So I think it has to be a hands-on experience, and I think it has to be something that they're actually working on that's relevant to them in their school. I've gone through plenty of professional development where people said this was the most important thing for the school or the district. I went through it, I go back to my school, and I started to implement it in my own classroom, and then I looked around and nobody else seemed to care about it, and within a few weeks or a few months, nobody was even talking about it anymore. So don't do it unless you mean it, first of all. And then second of all, it has to be, in my opinion, led by teachers and supported by teachers, and something that you can actually go out and implement.
Actually, this comes out of listening to some of the other candidates who've come here as well this week. I'm going to make an assertion which could be challenged, but I would say that under the previous superintendent, and for a long period of time, the principals in the buildings didn't have much autonomy. Mm-hmm. And irrespective of whether they did or not, that's an issue, right? I mean, even when NEAS comes around and they look and they credit schools, well, that's one of the issues that they look at. Do the principals have autonomy? So what's your position on that? What do you think?
Sure. Well, I mean, autonomy is a very ambiguous word. I mean, I think what you're referring to is being able to make some key core decisions on their own in their school. If we start off with curriculum, look, we'll set goals and benchmarks and requirements that everybody needs to meet. Some of them are state, some are goals and benchmarks that we'll set ourselves. But I want the principals to have the autonomy to be able to pursue whatever strategy they think is necessary. I will say on curriculum, though, I want to make sure that any curriculum we look at is a high quality valid curriculum. I'm not somebody who's for a scripted curriculum where everybody's on the same page every day. However, I do want to make sure that we have good curriculum, teachers are trained well in it, they know how to use it, and then they can implement it as they see fit. However, we will still be holding folks to expectations that they're going to be moving the ball forward with their students. Other types of autonomy on budget, on hiring, firing, principals have had the right since 1993 to hire and fire the staff in their schools, only limited by what their budget is. I would not interfere with that. I would be supportive of them through the Human Resource Department, making sure that we're getting good candidates and doing good vetting for them, and support them there. On the budget, again, obviously 70, 75, 80% of your budget is already tied up in human resource costs and fixed costs. I would give them the flexibility they think they need to be able to meet the goals that they have for their students in their school. But with autonomy comes responsibility, so I would make sure that they understand that as well. Sure.
Hi, good
Hi.
afternoon. I'm a gen ed teacher. My question is on technology. It plays such a big role in our lives as adults, and also it will play a large role in the lives of the students we teach. What are your thoughts on expanding technology? How would you go about doing that? What's your vision?
Sure. I think any technology we use or technology plan has to be driven by our educational plan. Technology is a tool. It's not something to be used to replace educators or replace good instruction. But I do think that there's an awful lot of great things available through the internet, supports that students can use to go back and refresh on lessons. Just walking through your schools today, I think most of your classrooms had what looked to be up-to-date technology, and the teachers were using it quite successfully to engage their students. So I think it's something that first you have to have a key focused education plan in place, and then build the technology supports around it. But I'm wide open to use of technology. I think it helps us engage a generation of young people who have been raised on technology, for better or worse. But I think that it shouldn't drive the process. It should be a supplement and support for what we're trying to do through our instruction.
Hi, I'm a special educator, and I'm just questioning what your thoughts are regarding the paraprofessionals in our buildings. What happens a lot of times is paraprofessionals are hired and then placed in classrooms on the same day that students arrive.
Ooh.
And they have no training,
Yeah.
which is not ideal in many of the classrooms in which they're placed. And it sets the students up and the teachers up for a difficult year at the beginning of the year, which is already a challenging time. So what are your thoughts on making sure that we're hiring people who are qualified, and if they're not qualified already, what kind of professional development opportunities you would offer to them to make sure that they are equipped to do their jobs, because many of them are not right now.
Yeah, in a perfect world, we wouldn't be in a situation where they're being hired the day that the students are coming in. So that being said, in a perfect world, if we can hire them based on what we know our needs are going to be, then I would want them to be involved in pretty much the same professional development that the teachers they're going to be working side by side with are, so that they're all on the same page and they have the same vocabulary and understanding. But I also know, again, having sat through lots of professional development myself, I want it to be individualized. A 20-year veteran teacher probably doesn't need the same type of professional development as a first or second-year teacher. So we need to provide opportunities for people to, carve out what, their professional development based on what their needs are, and the same is true of the paraprofessionals. One, we'd have to probably do some sort of an inventory of what are their strengths now, and what do they feel that they're missing, and also talk to their partner teacher about what is it that you think that your support staff needs to be more successful in supporting you?
I don't have a question. I have a question. I have a
question of the head of the school committee. So what we've done the last couple of times is to give the candidate an opportunity to decompress between this section and the public session. But if anyone has another question that they'd like to ask, we go with one question. And if not, we will conclude this portion of the program and reconvene at, Paul, you may have some summary.
First of all, I want to thank you and the screening committee, the interview committee, for even giving me this opportunity. I really have enjoyed the process and getting to know the folks that I didn't already know in Everett. I think you have a wonderful community here, and I think you have a wonderful staff. And just visiting the schools, I was commenting that your buildings, some of them are 10, 15 years old. I thought they were only like 2 or 3 years old because you've done such a magnificent job of keeping up the buildings. And I witnessed a lot of young people who were truly engaged and seemed to be experiencing a joyful education here in Everett. So I think what you're doing here, there's a lot of great things. I would love to be a part of the future of Everett and help lead Everett going forward in terms of building an even stronger academic program, but also helping our young people prepare for, the term of art now is the work of the future. The jobs that you and I know as adults are changing all the time, and we need to prepare our young people to be ready to be part of that future economy and to be successful, active participants in our democracy. So thank you for the opportunity. If I'm the successful candidate, I look forward to working with all of you. Thanks.